What if everything you knew about your family was built on a lie? What if the person you called aunt, your entire life, wasn't your aunt at all, but something else entirely? What if one dusty piano forgotten in an attic for decades held the power to shatter everything you thought you understood about where you came from? There are some things that should stay buried, hidden away in the dust and shadows of forgotten places. Some secrets are meant to remain locked away, tucked into corners where no one will ever find them. But sometimes those secrets find a way out. Sometimes they're waiting in the most unexpected places, just beneath the surface, ready to change everything. This is a story about one of those secrets. It began on a cold afternoon in November when Janelle Harper stood in front of the house she had just inherited, a house that had belonged to her grandmother Ruth, who had passed away 3 weeks earlier at the age of 87. The house was old, Victorian style, with peeling paint and shutters that hung crooked on their hinges. It sat at the end of a quiet street in a small town in Georgia, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets, when they existed, were kept close to the chest. Janelle hadn't wanted to come back here. She had left this town the moment she turned 18, driven by dreams of something bigger, something beyond the slow pace and whispered judgments of a place that felt too small to contain her. She'd built a life in Atlanta, a good life, with a career in marketing, a modest apartment, and a circle of friends who didn't know anything about where she'd come from. But now, standing in front of this house, with the key cold in her hand, she felt the weight of the past pressing down on her shoulders. Grandmother Ruth had been a quiet woman, reserved. She'd raised Janelle after Janelle's mother had died in a car accident when Janelle was only 7 years old. Ruth had been strict, but loving, the kind of grandmother who believed in discipline and faith, who'd taught Janelle to stand tall even when the world tried to push her down. But there had always been something distant about her, something Janelle could never quite reach. As if Ruth was holding something back, keeping a part of herself locked away where no one could ever touch it. Janelle pushed open the front door, and the smell hit her immediately: dust, old wood, and something faintly floral, like dried lavender that had been sitting in a drawer for too long. The house was exactly as Ruth had left it. Furniture covered in sheets, picture frames still hanging on the walls, a life frozen in time. And somewhere hidden in the shadows of this house was a truth that would change everything Janelle thought she knew about her family. She just didn't know it yet. Janelle moved through the house slowly, her footsteps echoing on the old hardwood floors. Every room felt heavy with memory. The kitchen where Ruth had taught her to make biscuits from scratch. The living room where they'd sat together on Sunday evenings watching old movies on a television set that still had dials instead of buttons. But it was the staircase to the attic that drew her attention. She'd been up there only once as a child, and Ruth had scolded her sharply, telling her it was dangerous, that the floorboards were weak and she could fall through. After that, Janelle had never asked to go back up. The attic had become a forbidden place in her mind, a part of the house that was off limits. But now Ruth was gone, and the attic was calling to her. Janelle climbed the narrow staircase, each step creaking beneath her weight. The air grew colder as she ascended, and when she pushed open the attic door, she was greeted by a gust of stale, dusty air that made her cough. The attic was cluttered boxes stacked against the walls, old furniture draped in white sheets, trunks filled with God knows what. Light streamed in through a small window, illuminating the dust particles that danced in the air like tiny ghosts. And there, in the corner, half hidden beneath a canvas tarp, was a piano. Janelle froze. She had never seen this piano before. Ruth had never mentioned owning one. In fact, Janelle couldn't remember her grandmother ever playing music at all. Ruth had been a woman of silence, someone who found comfort in stillness rather than sound. But here it was. An upright piano, old and worn, its wood dark with age. The tarp had protected it somewhat, but there were still scratches and dents along its surface, marks of a life lived long ago. Janelle walked toward it slowly, almost reverently, as if approaching something sacred. She pulled the tarp away completely, revealing the full instrument. The keys were yellowed with age, some of them chipped at the edges. The wood had a deep, rich patina, the kind that only comes from decades of existence. There was something beautiful about it, even in its decay, a sense that this piano had once been loved, once been played, once been the center of someone's world. Janelle sat down on the bench in front of it, her fingers hovering over the keys. She pressed one. The note that came out was slightly out of tune, but it was still clear, a single haunting sound that echoed through the attic and seemed to hang in the air long after the key was released. Janelle felt something stir inside her. A strange sensation, like a memory that wasn't hers, a feeling of longing that she couldn't quite place. It was as if the piano itself was trying to tell her something. She pressed another key, then another. The notes blended together, creating a melody that felt both foreign and familiar, at the same time a song she'd never heard but somehow knew in her bones. And then she saw it. Tucked into the space behind the music stand, barely visible in the dim light, was a small, leather-bound book. Janelle reached for it, her heart pounding. She pulled it out carefully, and as she did, she realized what it was. A diary. The leather was cracked and worn, the pages yellowed with age. On the cover, embossed in faded gold lettering, was a single name: Ruth. Janelle's breath caught in her throat. She opened the diary slowly, and as she did, a loose photograph slipped out and fluttered to the floor. Janelle picked it up, her hands trembling. It was a picture of her grandmother, but not the grandmother she had known. This was a young Ruth, maybe 20 years old, with smooth skin and bright eyes, wearing a simple cotton dress. She was standing next to a piano, this piano, and beside her, with his arm around her waist, was a man, a white man. Janelle stared at the photograph, her mind racing. She had never seen this picture before, had never heard Ruth mention any man, any relationship, any part of her life, before she'd become the stoic, solitary woman Janelle had known. She turned to the first page of the diary, and there, in Ruth's careful, slanted handwriting, were the words, "There are some loves that the world will never forgive you for. This is the story of mine." Janelle felt a chill run down her spine. She began to read. June 14th, 1962. His name is Daniel. I met him 3 months ago at the library where I work shelving books. He came in looking for something on music theory, and I showed him where the section was. He smiled at me, really smiled, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Something dangerous. I knew right away that this was wrong, that I shouldn't feel this way, that people like him and people like me don't mix, can't mix, not here, not in Georgia, not in 1962. But I couldn't help it. Janelle read on her eyes, moving faster across the pages. Ruth's diary told a story that seemed impossible, a love affair between her grandmother, a young black woman working at the local library, and Daniel, a white man from a wealthy family who had come to town to study music. They had met in secret. Late at night, after the library closed, Daniel would slip in through the back door, and they would sit together in the stacks talking about everything. Music, books, dreams, the future. He would play the piano in the library's small reading room, his fingers moving across the keys with a grace that took Ruth's breath away. And he taught her to play. July 3rd, 1962. Daniel says I have a natural gift. He says my hands were made for music. Tonight he taught me to play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. I made mistakes, so many mistakes, but he was patient. He guided my fingers over the keys, his hands covering mine, and I felt like I was floating. When I play, I forget where I am. I forget the world outside. I forget that what we're doing is forbidden. I forget everything except him. But the world outside didn't forget them. August 20th, 1962. Someone saw us. I don't know who, but word got around. Yesterday my father pulled me aside and asked me if it was true if I'd been spending time with a white man. I lied. I told him no. I told him people were just making up rumors because they had nothing better to do. He didn't believe me. He told me that if I ever brought shame on this family, he would disown me. He told me that what I was doing, if I was doing it, was not just foolish, it was dangerous. For me, for Daniel, for everyone. I know he's right, but I can't stop. Janelle felt her chest tighten as she read. She had grown up hearing stories about the Jim Crow South, about the violence and hatred that had defined that era. But reading about it in her grandmother's own words, seeing the fear and the longing written on these pages made it real in a way it had never been before. September 10th, 1962. Daniel gave me a gift today. A piano. He said he bought it from an estate sale, an old upright that needed some work, but he fixed it up himself. He brought it to the library after hours, and we moved it up to the attic storage room where no one ever goes. He said it was ours, a place where we could be together, where we could play music without anyone knowing. I cried. I don't think I've ever been given anything so beautiful in my entire life. Janelle looked up from the diary, her eyes moving to the piano in front of her. This piano. The same one. It had been theirs, Ruth and Daniel's secret sanctuary, hidden away from a world that would have destroyed them if it had known. Janelle turned back to the diary, her heart pounding. October 1st, 1962. We talked about running away, going north to a place where people like us can be together without fear. Daniel says his family would disown him, but he doesn't care. He says he'd give up everything for me. I want to believe him. I want to believe that love can be enough. But I'm scared. I'm so scared. And then, on the next page, Janelle found the entry that changed everything. October 28th, 1962. I'm pregnant. Janelle's breath stopped. She stared at the words, reading them again and again, as if repetition would somehow make them less shocking. Ruth had been pregnant with Daniel's child in 1962 in Georgia. A black woman carrying a white man's baby. Janelle's hands were shaking now. She flipped to the next page, desperate to know what had happened next. November 5th, 1962. I told Daniel today. He was overjoyed. He picked me up and spun me around laughing like a child. He said we'd get married, that we'd leave this place and start a new life somewhere far away. But I see the fear in his eyes. The same fear that lives in my chest every moment of every day. We both know what this means. We both know what will happen if anyone finds out. Janelle read on her pulse racing. Ruth and Daniel had tried to keep the pregnancy a secret, but it had become harder and harder to hide. Ruth had stopped going to work, claiming she was sick. She'd stayed inside, venturing out only at night to meet Daniel at the library attic, where they would sit together by the piano, making plans that felt more like dreams than reality. December 2nd, 1962. Daniel's father found out. I don't know how. Maybe someone saw us. Maybe Daniel told someone he trusted and they betrayed him. It doesn't matter now. His father came to our house last night. He didn't knock. He pounded on the door like he was trying to break it down. My father answered, and I listened from my bedroom as they talked. Daniel's father said that if we didn't handle this situation, he would make sure my entire family paid the price. He said he had connections, people who could make our lives hell, people who could make us disappear. My father was terrified. I could hear it in his voice, and I knew in that moment that everything was over. Janelle felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She could barely breathe. December 10th, 1962. They took Daniel away. His family sent him to a school up north, some boarding school, where they could keep an eye on him, make sure he didn't come back. He tried to fight them, but they threatened him. They told him that if he didn't go, they'd hurt me, hurt my family. He left to protect me, and now I'm alone. January 15th, 1963. I'm 7 months along now. I can't hide it anymore. My parents know. My father hasn't spoken to me in weeks. My mother cries every night, and I hear her through the walls praying for God to forgive me. They've made a plan. They say I'll go stay with my aunt in Alabama until the baby comes. They say no one here can ever know. They say I have to give the baby away. Janelle's heart felt like it was being crushed. Ruth had been forced to give up her child. The baby she'd had with Daniel, the love of her life, had been taken from her. March 3rd, 1963. I had the baby today. A girl. She's beautiful. She has Daniel's eyes, light brown, almost hazel, and she has my nose, my chin. I held her for 10 minutes. That's all they let me have. 10 minutes to memorize her face, to whisper to her that I loved her, that I would always love her, even though she would never know me. I named her Rose. In my heart, she'll always be Rose. But they took her. They gave her to a family I'll never meet in a place I'll never know. They changed her name. They erased me from her life. And I will spend the rest of my life wondering if she's okay, wondering if she's happy, wondering if she ever thinks about the mother who gave her up. Janelle was crying now, tears streaming down her face. She thought about her grandmother, the woman who had raised her with such quiet strength, such fierce love. She had never known that Ruth was carrying this pain, this grief every single day of her life. But there was more. Janelle turned the page, and what she saw made her heart stop. March 5th, 1963. My sister May came to see me today. She told me that she and her husband have been trying to have a child for years, but they can't. She said they've been praying for a miracle. She asked me if she could raise Rose as her own. She said she'd keep her close, that I'd still be able to see her, that Rose would grow up knowing me, just not as her mother, as her aunt. I said yes. I don't know if it was the right decision. I don't know if I'm being selfish or selfless, but I couldn't bear the thought of never seeing her again. So May took her. And from that day forward, Rose became Diane. My daughter became my niece. And no one would ever know the truth. Janelle stared at the words, her mind reeling. Diane. Aunt Diane. The woman Janelle had known her entire life as Ruth's younger sister, the fun aunt, who always brought presents on birthdays, who had a loud laugh and a bigger-than-life personality. Diane wasn't Ruth's sister. She was Ruth's daughter. Which meant... Janelle's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the diary. Which meant that Diane had lived her entire life not knowing who her real mother was. She had grown up calling Ruth sister, never knowing that the woman she thought was her sibling had actually given birth to her. The entire family had been built on a lie that had lasted for more than 60 years. Janelle sat in the attic for what felt like hours. the diary open in her lap, her mind spinning. She read on, flipping through the pages, watching as Ruth's life unfolded in ink and heartbreak. April 1963. Diane is 1 month old now. May brings her over to visit sometimes, and every time I see her, it feels like someone is reaching into my chest and squeezing my heart. She's growing so fast. She has Daniel's smile now. I can see it when May makes her laugh. I want to hold her. I want to tell her the truth. But I can't. I made a promise. I will keep that promise, even if it kills me. Ruth had kept her secret for decades. She had watched her daughter grow up, had been there for every milestone, Diane's first steps. Her first day of school, her high school graduation, all while pretending to be nothing more than an aunt. And no one had ever known. June 1975. Diane got married today. She looked so beautiful in her wedding dress. She asked me to walk her down the aisle alongside May, and I did, even though every step felt like I was walking through fire. I wanted to tell her. God, I wanted to tell her so badly. But how could I? How could I shatter her entire world like that? So I smiled. I hugged her. I told her I was proud of her. And I went home and cried until I couldn't breathe. Janelle wiped her eyes, her heart aching for the grandmother she had never truly known. She kept reading, but the entries became sparser as the years went on. Ruth wrote less and less, as if putting her feelings on paper had become too painful to bear. The last entry was dated just 3 months before Ruth's death. September 2024. I'm dying. The doctors say I have maybe a few months left. May passed away 2 years ago, and now it's just me and this secret. Diane still doesn't know, and I've decided she never will. Some truths are too painful to bear. But I've left the diary in the piano. If someone finds it after I'm gone, if Janelle finds it, maybe she'll understand. Maybe she'll know what to do with this burden I've carried for so long. I loved Daniel. I loved Rose. I loved the life we could have had. But this was the life I was given. And I did my best. I hope that's enough. Janelle closed the diary, her chest tight with emotion. Ruth had left this for her, had hidden it in the piano, knowing, or at least hoping, that someone would find it eventually. But what was Janelle supposed to do with this information? Did Diane deserve to know the truth? Or would it only cause more pain? Janelle stood up from the piano bench, the diary clutched in her hands. She looked around the attic at the boxes and trunks and forgotten pieces of Ruth's life. And then she saw it, another box tucked behind the piano with the word important written on it in Ruth's handwriting. Janelle knelt down and opened it. Inside were papers, old yellowed documents, birth certificates, adoption papers, letters. She pulled out the top document and read it. It was an adoption certificate dated March 1963. Child's name, Rose Harper. Adoptive parents, May Harper and Joseph Harper. New name, Diane Harper. Janelle's hands trembled as she read. There it was, the official proof of what Ruth had written in her diary. But there was something else in the box, a letter sealed in an envelope with Daniel's name on it. Janelle opened it carefully. My dearest Ruth, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to send it, but I need you to know that I never stopped thinking about you. Not for a single day. My family forced me to marry someone else, a woman. I don't love a woman who doesn't know me. I have children now, a life that looks perfect from the outside. But inside I'm hollow. I think about our daughter every day. I wonder what she looks like. I wonder if she's happy. I wonder if she ever asks about me. I hope she never does. I hope she has a good life far away from the mess we made. But I want you to know that I loved you. I will always love you. Yours always, Daniel. The letter was dated 1975, the same year Diane had gotten married. Daniel had written this letter, but he'd never sent it. Ruth had never known that he still thought about her, that he still carried the same pain she did. Janelle sat back, overwhelmed. This was bigger than she'd ever imagined. This wasn't just Ruth's secret, it was Diane's entire identity. And now Janelle had to decide what to do with it. She looked down at the diary, at the letter, at the adoption papers, and she made her decision. Diane deserved to know the truth. Janelle drove to Diane's house the next morning, the diary and the documents tucked into her bag like a ticking bomb. She hadn't slept. She'd spent the entire night in Ruth's house, sitting by the piano, reading and rereading the diary, trying to find the right words to say. But there were no right words for something like this. Diane lived in a small ranch-style home on the outskirts of town, the kind of place with a tidy lawn and flower beds that bloomed every spring. She'd always been a warm, vibrant woman, someone who laughed easily, who hugged hard, who filled every room she entered with energy. Janelle had always loved her, and now she was about to break her heart. Diane answered the door with a smile. Janelle. What a surprise. Come in, come in. I was just making coffee. Do you want some? Janelle stepped inside, her stomach churning. Yeah, coffee sounds good. They sat at Diane's kitchen table, mugs in hand, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Diane looked at her, concern creeping into her expression. Honey, are you okay? You look like you haven't slept. Janelle took a deep breath. Diane, there's something I need to tell you. Something about Ruth. Diane's smile faltered. What about her? Janelle reached into her bag and pulled out the diary. She set it on the table between them. I found this, in the attic, hidden in the piano. Diane stared at the diary, her brow furrowing. What is it? It's Ruth's diary, Janelle said quietly, from 1962. And there are things in here that you need to know. Diane picked up the diary slowly, as if it might bite her. She opened it, her eyes scanning the first page. Janelle watched as Diane's expression changed from confusion to shock to disbelief. What? What is this? Diane whispered. Keep reading, Janelle said, her voice thick with emotion. Diane flipped through the pages, her hands shaking. She read about Daniel, about the forbidden love, about the pregnancy, and then she reached to the entry about Rose. Diane's face went pale. No, she whispered. No, this can't be real. It is, Janelle said softly. I found the adoption papers. I have them here. She pulled out the documents and laid them on the table. Diane stared at them, her eyes wide, her breathing shallow. May wasn't my mother, she whispered. No, Janelle said. Ruth was. Diane's hands flew to her mouth and she let out a strangled sob. I don't understand. Why would she lie to me my entire life? She didn't have a choice, Janelle said, tears streaming down her own face now. The world they lived in, it wouldn't have allowed them to be together. And if people had found out about you, about who your father was, Diane, they would have killed them, both of them. Diane shook her head, sobbing openly now. But she was my mother. She was my mother, and she never told me. I spent my whole life thinking I was someone else. Janelle reached across the table and took Diane's hand. She loved you. That's why she did it. She wanted you to be safe. She wanted you to have a life. But I didn't even know who I was. Diane cried. I didn't know where I came from. I didn't know my own father's name. Janelle squeezed her hand. His name was Daniel, and according to Ruth, he loved you too. He couldn't be there. Diane buried her face in her hands, her body shaking with sobs. Janelle didn't say anything. She just sat there holding Diane's hand, letting her grieve for the life she'd never known she'd lost. After a long time, Diane looked up, her eyes red and swollen. Can I read the rest of it?" she asked quietly. "Of course," Janelle said. They sat together at that kitchen table for hours, reading through Ruth's diary page by page. Diane cried. She laughed. She got angry. She whispered apologies to a woman who was no longer there to hear them. And when they reached the end, when they read Ruth's final entry, Diane closed the diary and held it against her chest. "She carried this for 60 years, Diane whispered. "She carried this pain, and she never told anyone." "She told you now," Janelle said softly, in her own way. Diane looked at her, tears streaming down her face. "What do I do with this? How do I move forward knowing this?" Janelle didn't have an answer. But she knew one thing. "We go to the piano," she said. They drove back to Ruth's house together, the diary resting in Diane's lap like a sacred object. When they arrived, Janelle led Diane up to the attic. The piano was still there, waiting. Diane walked toward it slowly, her fingers reaching out to touch the keys. "She played this?" Diane asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every day," Janelle said. According to the diary, she played every single day. It was her way of remembering, of holding on to Daniel, of holding on to you. Diane sat down on the bench, her hands hovering over the keys. And then slowly she began to play. The melody was simple, halting at first, uncertain. But as she played, something shifted. The notes became smoother, more confident, as if the piano itself was guiding her hands. Janelle sat down beside her, and together they played. They didn't know the song. They didn't need to. The music was its own language, a conversation between generations, between mother and daughter, between past and present. And as they played, Janelle felt something release inside her chest, a tension she hadn't even known she was carrying. This piano had held Ruth's secrets for decades. It had been her companion, her confidant, her only outlet for the grief she could never express out loud. And now it was setting those secrets free. When the music finally stopped, Diane turned to Janelle, tears streaming down her face. "She loved me," Diane whispered, even though she couldn't tell me, even though she had to pretend. "She loved me." "She did," Janelle said, wrapping her arms around Diane. "She loved you so much." They sat there together, holding each other, surrounded by the ghosts of a past that had finally been brought into the light. And for the first time in 60 years, Ruth's secret was no longer a burden. It was a gift. Over the next few weeks, Diane began to piece together her history. She reached out to distant relatives, trying to find any trace of Daniel. She discovered that he had passed away 10 years earlier, but she found his children, her half-siblings, and she reached out to them. At first, they were skeptical, but when Diane showed them the diary, the adoption papers, the letter Daniel had written, they believed her. And they welcomed her. Diane had spent her entire life feeling like something was missing, like there was a part of her identity she couldn't quite grasp. Now, finally, she understood why. And understanding, even when it came with pain, was a kind of freedom. Janelle kept the piano. She moved it out of the attic and into the living room of Ruth's house, which she decided not to sell after all. Instead, she would keep it. Keep it as a place to remember, a place to honor the woman who had raised her. Every evening, Janelle would sit at the piano and play. Sometimes Diane would join her. Sometimes Janelle's young daughter, Ruth's great-granddaughter, would sit on her lap and press the keys, giggling at the sounds they made. The piano had witnessed so much pain, so much loss, so much love that had been forced into silence. But now it was witnessing something else: healing. The truth had been painful. It had shattered illusions and rewritten histories. It had forced Diane to confront a lifetime of lies, and it had revealed depths of suffering that Janelle had never imagined her grandmother had endured. But it had also brought clarity. It had brought connection. It had brought a family back together in a way that lies never could. Janelle thought about Ruth often. She thought about the choice her grandmother had made to give up her child, to carry that secret, to live a life defined by sacrifice. And she thought about Daniel, the man who had loved Ruth enough to risk everything, but who had been torn away by a world that couldn't accept their love. Their story was tragic, but it was also beautiful. Because even in the face of hatred, even in the face of a world that told them their love was wrong, they had loved anyway. And that love had created something real, something lasting. It had created Diane. And Diane had created her own children, who had created their own children, and on, until Ruth and Daniel's love had become a thread woven through generations, a thread that could never be erased no matter how many years passed. One evening, as Janelle sat at the piano, her daughter asleep in her arms, she thought about the question she'd asked at the beginning of this journey. What if everything you knew about your family was a lie? She had her answer now. The truth was complicated. It was messy. It was painful. But it was also what set them free. Because sometimes the lies we tell are meant to protect. But the truth, no matter how painful, is what allows us to heal. Janelle pressed a single key on the piano, and the note rang out clear and true in the quiet house. And somewhere she liked to think Ruth was listening.